Assalamu alaikum, everybody. I think we are live on this amazing technology once again. Good evening, and my name is Julie Siddiqui, and thank you so much for watching either live or on some sort of playback. This is the next in the series of the Thrive Live events that I'm doing every week, every Thursday, around about this time, with amazing women who have either overcome a challenge or who have done something amazing or found an issue that they feel very strongly about and have done something about it. And I think we learn a lot from the wisdom and the sort of learning points, and we realize that nobody is perfect and that all of us can learn from each other. And really it's very much in the sort of ethos, I guess, and the essence of what Together We Thrive is about. Together We Thrive is a new initiative that I've set up with some other amazing Muslim women dotted all over the UK. And we are learning and leading and challenging and collaborating with each other, plotting and planning, I guess you could say, but also working with women, particularly women from different backgrounds, different faiths, and working out how we can do stuff together, how we can thrive together. It's already been really exciting. So many ideas floating around, so much energy, which is what I am loving. So without any further ado, let me introduce you to an amazing woman who I think has bags of energy, which is what I love. One of the things I love about her, Rabbi Charley Baginsky. Is she there? Yes, she is. Hi. How are you?
Hi, Julian. Thank you so much for inviting me into your Thrive studio. It's very exciting.
I mean, I wish we were together somewhere in real, but
I
it's
know.
not meant to be, is it? So, and listen, you and I haven't really met properly, I don't think.
No.
But we have lots of mutual friends. We do work with similar people. I absolutely respect all of the things that you're doing. And you and I did meet over our eyes met, really, over a Zoom room and I knew straight away the kind of stuff you were saying, and your energy and a passion for what you're doing, that, you were I wanted you to be rather one of my tribe. And so when I started doing these, you were absolutely on my list because I thought people can really benefit from hearing from you who may not otherwise have that opportunity. So, but thank you so much. I know you're super busy, mom, and working from home and juggling loads of stuff. And you just came from another call to this.
I did.
Really,
I've
really
just come
appreciate this.
from our community briefing. Every week we have 41 communities across the UK, actually, and also in Copenhagen and in Dublin. And they come every week and we talk about the issues that are happening in our communities and share and learn from each other.
Amazing. So that is in itself brilliant that you came straight from that to this. So I really do appreciate that without you even being able to catch your breath. So listen, let's just dive in. And what I would love you to do, please, is just sort of paint a picture of you, a bit about you, your background, and where you are right now, I guess, so that we know we can sort of place you, really. So literally,
Sure.
physically, where are you? And
wow.
where, what's your sort of journey been to this point, really?
Okay, so I'm literally in Hemel Hempstead, which is not very far from where I grew up. I grew up in Watford, so not very far away. And but in between have been to Israel. I lived in Israel for a while, and in Surrey, and somehow have ended up not so far away from where I grew up. My journey. So I'm currently the joint interim director of Liberal Judaism. And I've been a liberal Jew since I was born. My parents were members of a liberal synagogue, and I grew up through the ranks of the community, through the youth movement. And I spent some time in Israel on my gap year when I was 18, and just decided to stay, really. I had a place at Cambridge, so I came back and studied theology at Cambridge. Always been fascinated by other religions, and I went to Cambridge, did a year, and thought I really missed being in Israel, and went back. And actually, while I was there, I did nothing to do with religion. I managed bars with a really multicultural bars, in expat bars in Israel, and came back to England really to finish my degree. And while I was back, started working in synagogues to pay my way through university. And really felt like there wasn't enough young female role models in progressive Judaism at the time. There were some greats, but there weren't enough.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt like there was a place for me. And I was looking for that sense of being Jewish, being part of my life in the everyday. And that and social justice and that commitment and study attracted me to the rabbinate. And along that journey, somehow 20 years later, here I am, and still doing it and still loving it.
Wow, it's amazing. And as I say, your energy is really infectious. And I love people that have got that kind of positive energy, because often we come across people that don't have that. And I feel like we really need each other to be around each other in that sense. I think I saw Aksa pop up. Assalamu alaikum, Aksa. Very nice to have you here. If anyone has any questions or would like to say that they're here, because one thing about this amazing technology as it is, we don't actually always know who's here. So we just sort of know that people are watching, but it's impossible to know who they are. So please do give us a wave or say hello or salam or shalom or something so that we know who's here. Would be great. And if you have any questions or comments, please do put them in the comments, and then we can, do our best to answer, or at least let you look at them. And if we can't answer them now, we will do that. Good to see you, Aksa. Thank you so much for joining. So let me just go back a bit. Gosh, there's so much in there, hours probably of conversation that I could ask you stuff about all of what you just said, including your stay in Israel, and then all of the other things that you sort of rattle through. Let me just ask you first, where did you live in Surrey? Because I also grew up in Surrey. So
really, so I was the rabbi in Kingston for nearly 15 years.
Okay.
But I lived in Ashtead. I lived in Surbiton, and then I lived in Ashtead. Little village of Ashtead, if anybody's watching out there. But we were basically the diversity. So we had a Jewish family, we had a family at the school who had 2 gay dads, and we had a family from Sri Lanka, and we were the diversity of Ashtead. So it's very, very different being in Hemel now, where it's a different kettle of fish.
So I grew up in Chertsey in Surrey, and
right, so not so far.
Not so far, and I used to go to Kingston really shopping. That was about it. But so I feel the Surrey bond. Then that's good. It's all good.
I love Kingston. I have to say, it was a great community, and by the river. Who doesn't?
Yeah, of course. Very, very nice. So let me just take you back. By the way, I think I saw Simon Rothstein and Shama. So thank you so much for saying hello and making us feel like we're not just talking to each other, although that would be fine too.
That would be fine.
And Jamila Mahmood, good evening. Thank you. Assalamu alaikum. So let me just take you back. You mentioned a few things that I think people would find interesting that wouldn't know necessarily what you mean. You mentioned, for example, liberal Judaism.
Sure.
Which I know, again, is a topic in itself, I'm sure, but I think people would find that interesting. But then you also mentioned something about there not being enough, I guess, people like you at that time. That's how you felt. So just give us a bit of an insight into that if you can.
So in liberal Judaism, in progressive Judaism, we've had women rabbis for 60 years. I mean, it's not a new thing. And now I would say we're definitely at least half, if not more. But I mean, like the world, there's been a difference in the way that the profile of women has changed. So that even though I definitely knew there were women rabbis, and I had some really amazing role models, many of who are still around, role models as women rabbis, I don't think the profile was anywhere close to the way that it is now. We have female rabbis in nearly every of the senior positions across the progressive world now. But for me at the time, I don't know, maybe you feel the same. Faith wasn't something, it's not cool when you're young. And it's a very different thing to see yourself reflected in somebody who feels like they're you, and they're speaking to you, and they're speaking your language. And I remember teaching in a class in Finchley, actually, for B'nai Mitzvah students, so students around the age of 12, and really feeling like their journey was changing, not necessarily because of the content, but because they felt there was somebody that they could talk to, and somebody who it's changed now. Now my kids don't think I'm cool, but at the time, I wasn't so much older than them, and it brought alive Judaism, I think, in a place that felt relevant, and so it made me feel like I had a role within Judaism to be that leadership, and I could be that leadership.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, which I think is fascinating, and certainly from I mean, I've interacted a lot with the British Jewish community over the last few years, and one of the most amazing things, certainly that youth movement sort of ethos, where pretty much every young person goes through a youth movement of some description, and then very quickly becomes a mentor themselves. I mean, I think that process is something, certainly for Muslim communities, we could really learn a lot from. And I hope that learning can happen, because I think it has made and will continue to make a huge difference if you just nurture. It sounds so obvious, but nurture that next generation.
Yeah, but I don't think it is obvious. I think that one of the things I see with our youth movement is that they're so empowered. We give them so much ability to really believe they can change the world, and to be autonomous, to make their own decisions. Our youth movement is completely vegan and vegetarian. Sorry, they're not completely vegan. They're completely vegetarian, and that's their choice. They do that on every event because they believe in it. They lead the way in inclusivity, in creative liturgy, in exploring identities and what it means. And that's because we've given them the tools to say, it's yours. This really belongs to you. Go do with it. And that's a massive empowering feeling when you're young. It's a bit of a disappointment then, I think, when you leave the youth movement, because you can't necessarily find a community that matches that same sense of creativity and dynamism. So we've got a challenge there for sure.
No, but I think it's a great, as I say, it's a great model. And in fact, as you're talking, I'm also thinking about because of course the Jewish community, as with all communities, has its spectrum of people and where they are on that journey, and that I find fascinating from, if you like, an outside perspective. I have many friends, particularly women friends from the sort of orthodox part of the Jewish community, who consider themselves feminists and are challenging and knocking on the doors and asking the questions and all of that. And I find that stuff really amazing, and really has empowered me to think that, you know, it's not just me that does that stuff, or my Muslim women friends, where we're challenging the status quo too, but actually women of other faiths and part of that spectrum, wherever they're from, are doing that too, which is amazing. So that is also something very powerful for me, which is why Together We Thrive, the idea of doing it together, is really powerful. So let me just go back a minute as well. You mentioned your children don't find you cool. I don't believe that for 1 minute. Well, of course I do, because mine don't either. So we're very uncool, of course. Just give us a sense of how do you, what's your life like day to day? What does it mean? You said you're the co-interim director of Liberal Judaism.
Yeah.
Kind of what does that mean? And then I'm just fascinated how that all kind of plays out in your life, because I know you're a very busy mum. I love your kids from what I've seen on social media. Very, very cute and lovely photos that you put up. So just give us a sort of snapshot of your day, really.
Wow. Okay. I don't really know where to start, because a lot of the time I don't know how it happens. I kind of finish the day and I'm slightly amazed that we got through it in one piece. I have 3 children, Joshua, Eliana and Cassia. They are 7, 9 and 11, nearly 8, 10 and 12. They are almost exactly 2 years apart from each other. And I look back on those days of sort of having 3 under 3 and 3 under 4, and just I don't know how I got up in the morning, certainly how I went to bed at night. And yeah, it's a bit of a blur. Life is a bit of a blur. I'm doing a very full-on full-time job that, however much I love, is intense and takes up a lot of time and a lot of energy. And I have 3 children that take up, and I'm a single mum, so it's me and the kids. They have a great relationship with their dad, but he doesn't live with us, so it's the 4 of us most of the time. I'm in a really privileged position that up until COVID, I've had amazing nannies who have really, Emma Rich, if you're watching, has, and Teresa, they became part of our family and were, that's a real privilege. I get that I'm really lucky to have that, but I'm also really lucky that I have kids that grew up in community. So I always refer to my kids as the Bima babies. Instead, Bima is the raised platform in synagogues, because I had these, when I was a community rabbi, I had these great communities that really taught me about being an integrated rabbi, that actually part of being a mother was also part of my rabbinate. And so I would hold the children on the bima while I was leading a service, and KLS Kingston was just brilliant. I went back from all my maternity leaves I had there, and I went back within 6 weeks of having the kids, because they let me bring the children with me. So the first year of each of my children's lives, they came with me on pastoral visits. They were passed round. I did meetings breastfeeding, and it was brilliant. It was brilliant. When I remember being, I don't know, in my early 20s when I was at rabbinical school, and a friend of mine, a little bit older than me, saying something about one day you will feel like all the bits of your life come together in one place, and not really understanding what that meant or visioning a day when that would happen. And I think, I don't know, I'm going to say this and tomorrow everything will fall apart, but I feel like I'm at that place now where I'm really honest about the fact that I have 3 children, and they're very much part of my job and my life. And life is a bit crazy when you're a mother, but actually it also has made me a much better rabbi, makes me a much better manager, balancer of time and boundary maker. And I'm so much more creative, I think, because of that, and maybe more compassionate as well. And that doesn't mean if you don't have children, you're not compassionate. It just means that's been my experience, has been that I'm a bit fairer on myself because of that as well.
Well, that's really fascinating. I just want to say hello and salam to Bushra. I think it was Owen, and also Jenny. And Owen, you're absolutely right. This is absolutely social media at its best. You know, there's some horrible stuff that happens online, and actually this is a very good use of, and a very blessed use, I would say, of social media. And we're very, very lucky to be helped today with the technology, which is also a real blessing, and I feel like it's looking great. So that's amazing. I think the stories there that you just gave us a snapshot in such a fantastic way about taking your kids with you, and them being, I think you used the word integrated, which is a great word. And I think that will have made a huge difference. You know, you've obviously got that mindset, and you've had to, I guess, as well, being, as you say, a single parent. It kind of comes as part of that, I guess, where you either switch off and think that you just do one thing, or you have to sort of merge them. And two, I do relate to that to some extent, because I've also tried to take mine, particularly not so much now when they can say no, but
yes,
they were younger, they had no choice. And people sometimes still remember and say to me, I remember you being in a meeting, and whichever one of my children, Issa or Naseba or whatever, are sort of underneath the table and lifting up the cloth and, you know, doing all of that stuff and drinking way too much tea and all of those kind of things that we had. So, you know, I think it's a great thing, but you've obviously set that as a mindset. I mean, how much, and you talk about it in a very positive way, you must have had some pushback or something somewhere where, you know, what's that look, or not? I mean, if you haven't, then fine, but no,
I mean, what woman hasn't? I don't think there is any woman in any environment that hasn't had some pushback. I have to give my mother some credit. I'm my father, but my mother was an amazing example of what was possible. I continue. My mother is still working full time, and her career goes from strength to strength. And she absolutely gave me the belief that that anything was possible. And so I think that's been my help when there's been pushbacks. And look, I do not look there is no question that I look like what if somebody said to you, I'm going to be interviewing my friend the rabbi this evening, that I am what would naturally be perceived as a rabbi. And that means that people make all sorts of assumptions about you, and they not only about your faith and your religiosity. I'm a single mother, that makes a whole other set of assumptions that come with that, and it's very difficult to always have the confidence to tackle them and to say to continue to open your mouth and continue to stand your ground, and to feel like you can still offer something. And I've got so many stories I can tell about perceptions or being told I couldn't do something, but I've also got a million stories where things were the opposite. I am really lucky with liberal Judaism. That doesn't mean it's perfect. In every community there will always be. But my experience has been overwhelmingly empowering for communities, congregations, individuals with the congregations, the support of my colleagues who've absolutely been that none of that has come into it, and been the opposite. That I meet people like you who thinks it's an absolute benefit to be a diverse person with and not fit the stereotypes of what people perceive. But it's difficult. I don't think any woman, as I said before, in the workplace or otherwise doesn't come up against an extra hurdle or two or three or four.
But that's why it's good to talk about and not be ashamed of that.
Sure.
And also to sort of help each other. I think there's always this, I know people have sort of said to me, or to people who are doing similar stuff to me, how do you do it? So I say, well, do what? What's it? If it means perfection and kind of everything's all right, well, clearly you don't know what my life is like, because it is like that. Nothing ever is like that, is it? But it's about how we then process it. And
we're really bad about saying it's a struggle, and not seeing that as a weakness. And we're really bad, or we have been bad as women, of supporting each other, and not just saying I've done it and therefore I'm not going to help the next person. And I think that this is the moment for, if I've said this to you before, I think this is the moment for female leadership, or a different style of leadership that perhaps us as women can model. I really believe that we need to be the place that embraces the diverse voice and the different ways of leading. And you mentioned that I'm a co-director. I'm joint director with Shelley Shokolinsky-Dwyer, and we are two very, very different people, but together we bring so much complement to each other, and working in partnership, and really singing the praises of the other half. And it's so nice. How rarely do we say, do you know what, you were brilliant, I really appreciated that you did. And it's so nice to hear. We've got to remember to say it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's great when you work with people that are different personalities and stuff like that. I think it's challenging sometimes, but it's great as well. Can you let's just park COVID for a minute, difficult as that might be, because I'm going to talk about that in a minute. So when I ask this next thing, don't say it in a COVID way.
Okay.
Like we're talking about you in February or March or January or whenever that was, October. Something.
Okay, I'll try.
What day to day does it mean to be a rabbi? Now, of course, you are the director or co-director of Liberal Judaism, so of course that brings with it its own. But just give people a sense of, who wouldn't know, what does it mean to be a rabbi, a community rabbi? What kind of stuff you do with people?
It's really funny, isn't it? Because you every day is so different. So on one hand, like any religious leader, you're dealing with the life cycle of individuals and of the community. So the festival cycle, every weekend we have Shabbat, so services on a weekly basis, maybe more, and religion school, and being inside of the festival cycle. And there's the life cycle, so marriages, births, deaths, a lot. Often for a community rabbi, funerals are a big part of our daily, or not, hopefully not daily, but a regular part of the job. But you're also a manager and a bureaucrat, and there's all the management of the synagogue. Most of our communities, particularly within liberal Judaism, our rabbis are the sole rabbi of a community. So they're managing volunteers, they are creating social programs, they're worrying about the database, they're doing their social media, they're, all those things as well. Like many clergy are in really practical. And then there's the cups of tea and the pastoral and spiritual elements of being a rabbi. So going to visit your congregants and working with families at great times as well as really difficult times. And then there's the community. So the community at large. So liberal Judaism sees itself as part of the bigger world as well, so that it's part of the rabbi's job for interfaith, for advocacy for the community and on social justice issues. Remember, as rabbi of Kingston, building a sukkah in the middle of Kingston to refugee issue was really big part of my rabbinate. So it's a great job because you're social worker, friend, spiritual advisor, change bringer, all sorts of things. It's draining, and the emotional capacity for all my colleagues at the moment as congregational rabbis gearing up to the High Holy Days. We've got big festivals coming up next week. The amount that they give of themselves to their communities, you cannot underestimate. They are working I know we're not doing COVID, but especially in this moment is huge.
No, but let's talk about COVID, because I think I just wanted you to tell the other bit before we went on to what it's like now, because of course it's different. So it has changed, and in fact, you and I met on another event where we were talking about faith communities and COVID, and the difficult stuff as well as the amazing stuff, the resilience, the way people have kind of responded has been, completely awesome. But just give us a sense of what that has looked like for you. How has it made you feel, and what kind of stuff have you had to do differently in the last 6 months or so?
So the word that I keep coming back to is accelerate. It's kind of accelerated everything. So it's accelerated emotions, and it's accelerated having to respond really fast, and it's accelerated change. So that's good and that's bad. So the amazing stuff that we're doing is so much stuff online. Services have moved online. We like to say our buildings never, our doors of our buildings closed, but our community is never closed over this period. We've moved our education online. We've got rabbis doing services every morning, people connecting, collaborating, working together in hubs across the country. We've moved pastoral support online. So this forum has been incredible for allowing us to keep going. But it's also been exceptionally draining. All my staff are working at home. That's a blessing in some ways, but it's also really, really difficult. We've had new staff start, so they're starting in an environment. One of our new movement workers said to me, I was just so much looking forward to that office feeling, that water cooler moment, and that's heartbreaking, because you want to reach out and allow their first job to be such a great moment, and that's really heartbreaking. And we've had groups were supposed to be on tours and camps, young people missing out on those connecting experiences. And I think it's going to be a while till we see the impact of having lost some of those really key moments in people's religious journeys, people who've missed their weddings and their baby blessings. What do you do with a baby who has missed that baby blessing? And there's not a sense of Judaism that baby blessing is somehow transformative and saving their soul, or we don't have that idea, but it is a marker. And so I think we're all in a sort of liminal moment, in this kind of permanent liminal state without knowing how to come out of it. Because how many rituals we invent online, and they are really meaningful for people, it's not the same as the real markers of being together. And I think that's the biggest challenge. And as we go into a new year, it's Jewish New Year, that sense of being, how do you mark a new start of a new year in this time is tricky. And so there's huge amounts of creativity. We're doing some brilliant things that I'm loving. And I've just come from York. I was at York's AGM before, our York Community's AGM, just before our community briefing. I'd never have been able to do that. How could I do that? It'd be in York, then be at the community briefing for 40 communities, now be here with you. So that's wonderful and amazing. But there is still a sense of uncertainty, unknown, which is deeply unsettling. And for somebody who likes boxes like me, I like to put things to know where I am and what I'm doing. I think that's really hard.
Yeah, someone just said, I can't see the name, but it says Rabbi Charley's enthusiasm is so inspiring. So you just said that, and I totally agree. It's really infectious. I mean, how do you switch off? Do you switch off? How do you kind of chill out? Have you been away anywhere in the last?
So I went to Centre Parks before this situation. Never done Centre Parks before. I'm not sure we're allowed to advertise that, but it was amazing. I loved it. It was brilliant. And I've learnt to cook. I never cooked anything. And during lockdown, I have learnt to cook. And
so do you find that relaxing, or kind of, because I don't?
So I never cooked because I hate mess. It's just terrible. I've got 3 kids, 2 cats and a puppy on the way, and I hate mess. This is like bad idea on all sorts of levels. And so I never cooked because I didn't like the mess, I think. And it's taught me to let go of that, which has been relaxing. Learning to just say, do you know what? I'm going to wait at least until I finish cooking. My partner, I do have a partner, he's probably watching. He always says that I start clearing up before we've even, finished the meal. So I've learned, I think that's helped me to switch off. Yeah, to let it go.
Yeah. So, and of course, I think the challenge for all of us, the good side of it is great. As you say, you can participate in things that you otherwise wouldn't be able to, and there's no traveling. And I think for those of us with kids, is very appealing. The downside, I guess, of course, one of them is that sort of overlap, between your work and home and family and relaxing and working and praying and feeling. And I mean, it all kind of just has sort of become one, hasn't it? It's not always easy to separate those things out, which I think, going back to your integrated life point, I think is a great thing, but it can also, I think, take its toll as well on everyone.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I remember as a community rabbi, always, particularly when I lived quite local to the synagogue, it was always really hard going to the supermarket, because you always think, I'm going to bump into a congregant, they're going to look in my trolley and think, too many bottles of wine, or too much fatty food, whatever it is that's your vice. And so even when we're not in this situation, I think as clergy, or as people very involved in community, those boundaries are always really tricky. And with COVID, we've had an extra kind of layer that you can see straight into my house. I'm not great at putting up this screen as many people do behind me.
I love that. I mean, that is a cat thing, isn't it?
That is a cat tower. Yeah.
I think on the last one that we did together, your cat actually did perform nicely and sat on that.
I know. They're usually very snarky.
Cats don't, do they? They don't always do what you want them to do at all.
No, nor children, which has also been the joy of COVID and watching into people's houses, is that children don't perform quite as they would like them.
It's really good. So let me just, and we're going to go on to my 5 in 5, so we're going to give it a go. But before we just dive into that, and I ask you those 5 questions, what do you think, what's your hope? I mean, we talked, you talked a bit about women supporting each other. What do you think that might look like? Because it's something I feel very strongly about. I've done lots of different work, but the thing that really gets me up in the morning, can potentially keep me awake at night in a good way, is this kind of stuff. Women, I think you're absolutely right. It does feel like a moment, for sure. Now this is us talking in 2020 in Britain, where lots of amazing stuff has happened before. So I always sort of caveat my stuff by saying, look, I don't see myself as doing anything particularly new as such. I think we're just building on what other people have done that's worked, some stuff that hasn't worked. But what do you think that might look like now for people like us working together, being very different, but also finding points to connect. What do you think that might look like for women going forward, or women, I think, of faith communities, for me particularly, is of interest, because I think there's just an untapped market there.
So I think what we've seen from leadership too often in recent times has been one voice, has been this sense that strength and truth lie in one voice. And for me, this is the point for women's leadership, or a different type of leadership at least, is to be able to say this and this is the truth. And actually we can talk about it constructively, and my truth it's so deep in Judaism, this idea of being able to hold different truths at the same time. And I'd love us to reconnect with that idea that to learn and to hear is not a weakness, and to lead together side by side is also not a weakness. So for me to say, do you know what, actually I'm not very good at this, I do need somebody else to be able to take that, and it's taught me something and I've learned from something, is not a weakness. That's a huge strength. And I want to hear us amplify each other's voices, and to lead side by side, and not to see that as somehow, because that's female, because we're doing it, we're co-leading, that somehow that is less good, or because we're not as good. And that takes us coming into this moment of feeling confident to say, this is just a different way of doing things. And I truly believe, this is my theology, that God lives in the tension, that God lives in, that it's possible for God to live in not conflict as in, you know, fisticuffs and war, but in the conflict of being able to disagree and still come out of it changed and moved and friends and talking. Interfaith is at its best when we do get to the point, we have to be friends first, but when we get to and trust each other, but when we get to the point when we can talk about things that actually are discomfort, are uncomfortable, we know that we really are friends, and we really are making change. And if we can do that across the board, I think God will emerge in that space.
Yeah, very exciting, really. I mean, we could honestly, I knew this would happen. We could talk about all this stuff for so long. So we've had some brilliant comments that I've just seen sort of coming through. Rizwana now is talking about my name, actually, or the sort of the derivative of my name. But she also mentioned before about that it is difficult working from home. Also commented on how we as women need to work together, but that misogyny is a big thing. And one of the things that I've sort of learned, and it's been a brilliant learning for me, as I mentioned earlier, the sort of working with women, Jewish women, other women from different faiths. People always talk about how much we have in common, which of course we do, and particularly, you know, from a sort of, if you like, theological perspective. And for Muslims, it's quite easy for us to see that because of it follows on, and it's amazing every time. But I think what people don't always think about is the stuff, the gender inequalities, or the things in the community, or the sort of over dominance of male leadership, or whatever, the lots of different things, and juggling the things that we've spoken about. We also have that stuff in common too.
Absolutely.
To explore is brilliant. Someone else just talked about your positive outlook. I absolutely agree with Jamila about that. You have an amazing positive outlook. It's a real blessing, really, and I feel very lucky to call you my friend. Owen asked a question earlier to you about how do you switch off TV? What TV program do you like? And he mentions he likes police murder dramas. And Owen, you're like my husband, because he does too. And I don't get it. I don't find that relaxing at all.
Oh my goodness. That's totally my Audible. On my Audible is all psychological thrillers. That's my cleaning. I have to say, I mentioned it before, cleaning is my switch off. I'm really excited. I've got a bit of time tomorrow when the kids are at school. I'm going to clean my house. I know that sounds mad, but it's my thinking time. Yeah. It's absolutely really important to me. And I love trash TV. I'm like, can I confess this here? Is everybody going to judge me? What have I been watching? I've been watching Married at First Sight Australia, which is awful. I mean, awful. But it is my like background TV terrible confession here. I like trash TV and audible psychological thrillers.
Wow, it's deep stuff. It's like different ends of the.
Terrible.
I love
Terrible.
podcasts nowadays and able to listen on the move, and when I'm walking
Yeah.
around the house and putting my headphone. I mean, I love that. I sort of go into
Yeah.
my own world. You got another fan here, Rizwana, said she likes psychological thrillers as well.
Oh my! We'll have to share our favourites.
Yeah, that's right. And Aksa mentioned earlier about the fact that her husband has learned to cook in lockdown.
Oh, really?
I mean, that's a win-win. That's great, isn't it, as well?
It's amazing. I've discovered, I mean, I won't name the exact type of brand, but I discovered a pressure cooker. That was what started
name it, because it's fine.
It's called the Instant Pot.
Okay.
And you put everything in it,
yes,
and in seconds it cooks everything. And
I like the sound of that.
It's unbelievable. That was my intro into cooking. And it's changed. But now I cook. My dad is in shock. He doesn't can't quite believe it.
Yeah, so Isabella is asking, when do you find time to sleep? I think it's a great question.
Yeah,
I was going to ask as well. You know,
I sleep. You know, I crash out basically at the end of the day. And look, this is my favorite thing to do. So I'm probably more energetic now than I was at 2 o'clock. Answering a lot of emails about what's going to happen with buildings reopening and not reopening. And this is great. I mean, this gives me energy. And
I'm the same. I don't find this a chore at all. Anything like
no, this is wonderful.
And people often say, and I think, no, you know, if you're around the right kind of people, it never gets boring. I mean, I feel better as a person myself. It gives me distraction, you know.
And I have to say, I'm doing a job right now that, you know, I have wanted to do for forever. You know, like liberal Judaism for me is, I'm so proud of being able, for this short period, for this interim period, of being able to be leading the movement. I mean, it's a privilege. It's exciting. We're doing great. I mean, the things that the movement is doing and my colleagues and our lay leadership are doing, it's just brilliant. It's brilliant. It's inspiring.
No, and it's great to be in a job that you love as well. I mean, that's amazing kind of thing.
It's a privilege.
They're lucky to have you as well, of course. You know? I'm sure you're I'm sure you're really giving a lot of comfort and inspiration to many people, women, men. I'm sure lots of different age groups. So, you know, I really sure that that's very much appreciated. So let's go for this 5 in 5.
Right.
So the idea really is, especially for me, but I think for you too, because I can see you're like me, the discipline of me asking you 5 questions, you answering within 5 minutes, all of it, or sort of ish. So 5, 8, you know, I'll give you that. I'll give you that. I'm going to not ask you too much. I just wanted to do it so that people can get an insight into some different bits of Charley, Rabbi Charley. And I'm asking it the same every week, but without me digging in, even though I'll be very tempted to ask you more about each one. And we could talk a lot about, I'm going to try not to do that. Is that okay?
Yeah.
So first one, actually, the first one is sort of 2. One is, part of it is a favorite food and a favorite part of the world. So both of those, but you know, you don't have to.
So my favorite food, I love duck and pancakes. That's my favorite. That's my go-to comfort, like amazing food. It's my favorite. My favorite. Favorite place, it's a bit split, which is a bit like my personality. So I love Seven Sisters by the Sea. It's near Seaford, amazing. My favorite place in the UK to be. And my other favorite place has to be in Israel. Anywhere, I'll take the desert, or in the north where I was at university. I've got a lot of friends there, family there, and I feel very so between the two, if I'm allowed to take 2 places with me.
Yeah, we'll give you that. Okay, so next one, your favorite verse from the Bible or a Jewish teaching?
So that's an impossible question to ask a rabbi, like impossible. But so I have to go with the verse that I've been studying a lot in the last week, because we're approaching High Holy Days, where this part of the Torah is read, which is Lo b'shamayim hi, which means it's not in the heavens, which is this idea that the Torah is not in heaven. It's here, in the here and now, for us to grapple. In fact, it goes on to say it's not too hard for you, that you shouldn't work it out for yourself, and it's not across the water that you should ask somebody else to go and get it for you. It's right here, right now. And I love that idea that the Torah belongs to us to interpret, that it's constantly giving us something new, and every time we read it, something else emerges from it. So at the moment, that's my favorite verse.
Amazing. God, I'd love to dip into that, but I'm not going to, because I can't. I'm being disciplined with myself, but it's so fascinating. Maybe another time we can dig into some of those teachings. So next one would be a lesson that you would teach your younger self, or advice that you would give to your younger self.
So you can listen in more detail. I'm on a podcast on the Liberal Judaism website that talks about this, which is what would I tell my daughter? So I have a daughter who is the spit of my mother. She is like mini me, my middle daughter Eliana. And so I look at her, and it's scary when you see yourself. And I think that I would tell my younger self, it's okay not to always be right. It's okay. It's all right. And even when you know you're right, to not have to say it. And I'm still learning that. I'm still learning. I find, it's still a lesson for me to learn. But I think that's what I would tell.
No, it's very deep. And as you say, we're sort of passing this stuff on to our kids. It's sort of scary and amazing all at the same time, isn't it? Especially if you've got those that are, mine are now at the age where they respond and challenge and ask questions, and we sort of sit at the table, and I look at my husband and I think, well, how
what have I created?
It's like, I don't know how to answer this one, but it's, that's what we want, isn't it?
It is, absolutely.
And you've got that to come when yours are slightly younger than mine. It gets even more, let's say, interesting. We love it, but it's like, whoa,
it's challenging.
And I think kids nowadays too are also being encouraged to do that, which is amazing, questioning and asking stuff and not taking one answer, and it's a great thing. But anyway, look, let me delve in. So a favorite quote or saying?
So that's easy for me because I have it on my arm.
Okay, show us then, please.
I show you. Says it here, which says, "This too shall pass." Which often we think of as being a Jewish phrase, but it's in a lot of traditions. And why? There's a piece of text that was written by a Jewish educator in the States, and she was writing in this lead up, in the period that we are now, in this lead up to High Holy Days, about wisdom. And she said that when she was at school, her religious studies teacher said to her, the most important phrase that you'll ever know is "this too shall pass." And she went home and she said to her dad, "This is ridiculous, like, who's going to tell that to somebody on their wedding day?" And her father says to her, "No, it's exactly the couples that know that their wedding day will pass, and it's the marriage that's and she said, "Now I'm a harried mother of two." She was a harried mother of two, and she says, "I'm sitting on the couch with my baby, and there's a million things to do, and I remember this too shall pass," because not only has that phrase got me through the most awful moments in my life, but actually it also reminds me to stop, that those amazing moments too will pass. And so be in them, be in those moments. And so I have it here because it's my tree of life underneath. This too shall pass. This moment will pass. So hold on to it.
Yeah, no, it's a great way to look at it from both perspectives. I think you've explained that really, really beautifully. Thank you so much for that. Someone just mentioned that there's a book called Note to My Younger Self. I think it was Rizwana, called Debbie Moore, Note to My Younger Self.
Okay, we'll check it out. Thanks,
Rizwana. And then the last one would be, what or who helps you to thrive? So in my sort of thrive theme, I love the word thrive because it just is very positive. And so what or who do you need in your life to help you to thrive?
So it's quite simple for me, really. I'm lucky to have a great family. I mentioned my mum, but she's massive inspiration to me, and my kids as well. They are hugely inspiring. I'm very, very lucky, and they make me feel very grounded, and they keep me, I hate that expression, but it's true. They keep you real. They keep
Mhm.
reminding you actually what's important. And I have a great partner. So we are in different places constantly, but he's like my exact opposite. And he's just so relaxed. And he grounds me, luckily. Yeah.
Thank God.
Yes.
Well, that's a beautiful set of answers. It's been an amazing conversation, really a very big privilege for me. I love the fact that we've connected here and elsewhere, and that we have so many mutual friends. I think you're an absolute,
it's true. Did you see that?
What did it say? You need to
We
be.
need to
Oh
do
my,
this the other way
no,
around.
no.
Absolutely.
Maybe next time. It's very difficult for me to kind of. That's why I thought it's a good discipline. And but no, I just want to say that you're an absolute breath of fresh air and a great, I'm sure, inspiration for many people. I just want to send love and prayers to 21st century Moses leading liberal Judaism through COVID. Wow, look at that. I mean, that's
thanks, Owen.
That's a big but he's absolutely right. So yeah, let me just send love, prayers to you, to your family, the kids. Let me remember their names: Joshua, Eliana, Cassia. Yes, beautiful.
Wonderful. You're amazing.
And let's keep these conversations
We
going.
will.
And I hope that, and I'm sure people have benefited a lot from this. Please keep in touch if you like what you see, what you feel, because a lot of it is about how we feel, of course. This is Anne, actually just spoke there. She's a Methodist friend of mine who I did some work with last year. Lovely person amongst a lovely group of amazing women. And she's saying many reverberations, which of course is always going to be the case when you get women talking from a faith, humanity perspective. We get all of these overlaps. That's what I love about it. So thank you so much for saying that, Anne. Let's just see what this says. Wonderful to hear this, especially that we all come from different backgrounds and way of life. Most important is to understand each other and be brave to ask questions. Absolutely, totally.
Thanks,
agree.
JJ.
Yeah, and really thank you so much for saying it. And that kind of building of trust and friendship, and allowing then stuff to happen, to realize we're not all the same, that we bring whatever we bring. These kind of conversations are really powerful and rich for all of us. So thank you so much for taking time out of your already busy day. And thank you everyone for watching, and may God bless everyone and keep us all motivated and connected, and not allow the horrible people online, offline, or wherever to divide us and to upset us. And I think we need to hold on to conversations and moments like these, knowing that we can do this. There's many more people, good people in the world than bad, whether that be locally, nationally, or internationally. Don't get sidetracked with the horrible stuff. This is what life is about. And as our rabbi here said, this too shall pass. These moments will go quickly. Hold on to the good stuff. Don't sweat the small stuff, which I've got as a postcard I just bought to put, because it's important for all of us to remember that. And make the best of it, and reach out to each other. Often we're made to feel that we have to kind of go inwards. And of course there's we didn't talk about the historical Jewish Muslim stuff because I didn't want to, because it's not about that, and people can explore that with each other. It's not to say those things aren't real and we need to talk about stuff that's happening abroad or here with each other, but you need to build the friendships first and the trust. And that's what we at Nisan Hashim do, of course, to plug for Nisan Hashim Jewish and Muslim Women's Network, the biggest one in Europe. And it's really at the heart of it is about that friendship, getting people to build the friendships, get to know each other. And then you can basically talk about whatever you want to, but that trust and that friendship has to be there first. So thank you so much, Rabbi Charley. Have a wonderful evening, and to be continued, I guess. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for watching.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you.